Can everybody hear me? Is my mic working? Hi. Hello, everyone. We'll start a little different. I'm just going to have everybody come up, and we're all going to sit. And before each question that we start off with, I'll give a little intro to all of our panelists. Okay, fueling the fire without burning out. That's an interesting topic, and I think it was the joke's on me that they asked me to moderate this panel, because anybody that's ever worked an event with me, I am 1 second away from a meltdown at like any given time. So I hope to learn a little something by moderating this. So like Andy said, I'm the executive director of the Jockey Club Safety Net Foundation, which is a charitable trust that assists people in horse racing that are in need. And I also serve as the Director of Industry Relations for the Jockey Club, so I wear many hats, and I think that in an industry where horses are the center, I think that's bled into whatever career you have in horse racing, which is 365, 24/7. And so I hope that this panel opens up that it's common to feel this way, and we all have felt this way in one time or the other. And I hope that we can have a lot of Q&A, so depending on how long our panel goes, I'd love for you guys to chime in at the end, and we could talk a little bit about that. So let's start right off. Melanie Case, who is the director of the Women's Ministry for the Kentucky Racetrack Chaplaincy. Melanie, your work is working with people. Talk a little bit about how that affects your day-to-day and being that resource to people in serious need.
Okay. Yeah, so a lot of what we do as chaplains is done on the backside of the racetrack. So we have, at Churchill Downs, we have about 1,000 people working on the backside of the racetrack, and my job really is to work mostly with the women. So about 30% of those are women. So like some people on the previous panel mentioned, like that has grown over years. And so I think but resourcing those women and being present and being available and being accessible so much of the time, as I'm sure a lot of us are, can be really hard. Like, we don't turn off. Our phones don't turn off for the most part. We don't, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about, we're in a society that now talks about people powering down, that talks about us taking power naps. And we talk about burning out. These are things that candles and machines do, but we're talking about ourselves like that. So I think it's like the reality is knowing that we're in an industry that requires a lot of us, and for us to be on a lot of the times, a lot of us are front facing. So we're the face of whatever kind of part of the industry that we're in. And so we have to be that, we have to bring that presence and be on, even if we don't feel like it, like was talked about earlier. I think the challenge is we actually are needy as well sometimes. We're not always on. We're not always ready. We're not always prepared. And so I think we talked about balance, and we can talk more about that as the panel goes on, but I think it's important to realize as a chaplain, I have to say, we need God, right? He made us, and he made us to be in a relationship with him, but we need each other. And that's what I love about this event, is it shows that like we can be for each other, we're beside each other, and so to actually be for one another and to support each other, I think that's super important to say, hey, when I need a minute, or when I'm, yes, there are times when you have to be on and you have to go into that ready to go. But there are also times, so there are these peak times. Those of us who are putting on Breeders' Cup, Derby, these big events that you're going to be like Shannon said, 24/7 for a series of time. That's like a harvest time. But you can't go like that. You're not a machine. You can't go like that forever. There's a time for that, and then there's a time for rest. And so it's recognizing, hey, at the end of the day, I've done what I can do, and I need to, in a certain way, turn off. I don't have to always be accessible. And I think it's important to admit that we have limits. We're limited. So as humans, we were made with limited space, limited time, limited resources, limited power, limited knowledge. Like, these are not things we have in abundance and infinite. And so we have to recognize those are our limitations, and we can be okay with that. We don't have to. I think that what happens is we end up striving to be limitless. That's our industry calls us to do that. Our culture as women calls us to do that. And in a lot of ways, that's what we want. Like, we don't want to have limits, right? We don't love those limits. And so when they're put on us, we're like, nah, I'm going to stretch out of this. I'm going to hulk out of this. Like, I can do more. I can be more. In a lot of ways, that's true. But also, like, we can't do everything. And so I think it's really important for all of us to recognize, I can't do everything. Exhale, lean into that, and then lean on other people. So I think those are some things that are important for me to remember.
Awesome. Kellie, founder of the Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare, grassroots effort. Started it yourself, build it every day. What is it like starting an organization? It can be daunting, exhausting. Why do you do it? What keeps you motivated?
Well, we're all here because of the horses. That's the first thing. Being on an island, trying to help as many as you can when you're the only one is, yes, very exhausting. Every morning I wake up, I've been going through a lot of burnout this past year, and I have started to put some limits for myself. I've distanced myself from the racetrack. It is a very male-dominated industry in the Caribbean with the Latins, and it has really been a struggle. I've been down there doing it for over almost 30 years, and I think one thing that you just have to think about and remember is that you can't just run yourself into the ground every day. And even though I have all these horses in my backyard, we have 31 horses right now, you have to say, and like you were saying, you have to like just take a moment and say, I need to go in my office, I need to walk away from the barn for a few moments, take a deep breath, and figure out how I can fix this next situation. The problem that I have is I am the only one in the Caribbean, so I don't have anybody to turn to. I'm pretty much alone down there. Erin and I have been friends for years. Erin was one of the first people that came down to Puerto Rico to actually see the situation after Hurricane Maria, and we've remained very good friends. And I think coming together and working together to try and help each other especially with the industry in Puerto Rico, because we do have more women coming in now, but it's still difficult to prove yourself down there, I find, and I'm counseling women at the track sometimes, like they come to the aftercare and meet with me and say, how can we do this, how can we do that? And I've tried to actually do women's events down there and have not been able to, which is sad, but I think, you just need to like take a deep breath every day and kind of take a step back and think that, okay, you can't do it all. And you just need to think about your mental health and your physical health also.
So the passion keeps you waking up every day. The passion of aftercare is important to you. So even being tired, it gets you up every day.
Yeah, I go to bed every night and I want to quit and I want to close down every single night. And then I wake up in the morning, look out my kitchen window while I'm having coffee, and I see all the horses, and I'm like, okay, we got to keep going. We got to do it again. It's 7 days. 24 hours a day.
We were laughing. You do a factory reset every night.
Yeah.
Turn it off and turn it back on. Try again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Erin, you are the executive director of the TCA. That's a lot of work. You guys cover a lot of different aspects of racing. You have aftercare, you have human resources. Mm-hmm. You have to be everything to everyone and also raise the funds to do that. So what is it like in a position at a nonprofit where you're asking people for a lot? How do you compartmentalize that and not get compassion fatigue? All these resources need your resources, and then you have to create those resources.
Right.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle. It's a great question, though. So yes, at a nonprofit, of course, you're always fundraising in one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that we do is in support of our mission. So a lot of people in this room, I have asked for a donation or an in-kind gift or something like that. So for TCA, for Thoroughbred Charities of America, we grant out, as much as we can fundraise in a year is close to what we're going to grant out. So that's like even a little bit more pressure in a way to keep fundraising throughout the year, because the more we fundraise, the more we can grant to our grantees. And this year we granted to 98 organizations over $1 million. So it's like this constant sort of churn to, ask everyone you see, for a donation. And sometimes I get in my head about it. I'll think, oh my gosh, if I'm calling someone and they see my number pop up on their phone, are they gonna, hit end call or whatever if they see me coming? Are they gonna walk the other way? Because I do feel like I'm always asking. But that's the nature of nonprofit work and fundraising. But sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to always be on that end of the conversation. So there's a few things that I do try to remember to help me kind of compartmentalize those things. The first one is, it's not about me. This is about our mission. When I'm asking for a donation, this is about the thousands of horses and people that we help every year. This is why I'm asking. So it's kind of important for me to be able to recenter the motivation for why I'm asking the questions, and again, take myself personally out of the conversation. And then further, to further that line of thinking, it's really helpful for me if I can kind of try to reframe the scenario, and remember that I'm inviting people to make an impact, to join us, to join our team, to help us help the thousands of horses and people that we do every year. So when you can kind of reframe the scenario like that, it kind of helps, again, to kind of compartmentalize the task. Our charities, the aftercare charities, health and human service charity, backstretch charities that provide health and human services, they need champions. They need more supporters. And if I can be here to help inspire and educate new donors and new people to become aware of what we're doing, that's my job. That's what we need to do. So I think that's helpful to kind of, again, look at the task from you're presenting an opportunity to new donors, to new folks in the industry that might not otherwise know what we do. And then kind of lastly, I think it's really, really important that we celebrate our wins in this industry. Everywhere we look in the world really is a negative headline about something. So it's really easy to kind of get mired down in the negative. So if we can kind of stay in the positive, celebrate those wins, if I can celebrate the highs at TCA and kind of try to stay out of the lows, that will refill my cup in many ways and reinvigorate me. My personal favorite time of year at TCA is when we're sending out our grant checks. That happens at the end of August every year. And like I said, this year we were able to send out 98 grant checks, which is huge. And when I get a phone call or an email about, from a charity that says, hey, we just got your grant check and it came just in time, and now we're able to give this horse a surgery, maybe remove a chip or something, and then that way he can go on and rehab and move into a second career. I'm like, okay, this is what it's all about. That's what makes it worth it. Or, if I hear that our grant check was being used for ESL classes for backstretch workers or something like that, I'm like, okay, that's, again, it kind of just recenters and you're able to make sense of why you're asking as much as you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Focusing on the positive.
Exactly.
Dr. Brittany. Veterinary school. I mean, even people that failed biology, like myself, know that it's a lot of schooling. It's a lot of work, and this animal is in your hands for help. What does that mean? How do you deal with that hard work and know that it's worth it? What do you do every day that keeps you motivated and pushing past sometimes really long days and stressful days? Who do you rely on? What do you do to make it easier for you?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yes, getting here took quite some time. So going through veterinary school, going through internship, residency, and then now getting here to Central Kentucky, and being here the last year has just been incredible. Lots of pressures that come with it. And I imagine that you all have lots of pressures in your job as well. And it makes some days really hard. But like you said, celebrating the wins, that is huge, right? Because not every day goes exactly how I want it to. And so I think learning from the moments that don't go how I want them to, but then celebrating those little wins that are indeed there, and sometimes they're just a little bit harder to find. But getting through the days, getting through the breeding season, getting through school, that sort of thing, I had to lean on others for that. I had to find a support system. I had to find mentors, and I just needed to surround myself with those good people. And those people have changed over the years, and I think that support system has grown, and everyone plays like their own role. I feel like during residency, I expected to have one mentor that was going to be able to do everything for me. How could I expect one person to mentor me in all of these different roles, doing veterinary medicine, teaching, research, having a family? Like, that's a lot for me to expect from one person. So then I started finding other mentors. So I feel like I kind of created they didn't know it, but they were my mentorship team. And I said, okay, well, this person, they're the kind of vet I want to be. This person is the type of leader that I want to be. This person is the type of mother that I want to be, the friend that I want to be, that sort of thing. So I think like finding multiple people that can support and mentor in different ways. And so same then, I guess, with people who I call on a day-to-day basis. There are those people that I call that I know that I can just vent to, and I can just tell everything about a case, and they'll just say, that's really tough. That was tough. Or I can call people who will give me advice. I can call people who will give me tough love that I may or may not need. So yeah, I think it's just finding that team that will help me. Yep, exactly. That'll help me get through the day to day. Because yeah, finding the motivation can sometimes be hard. I go to bed thinking about the horse. I wake up thinking about the horse. And that can be a lot, and a lot of pressure that I put on myself. But I mean, the horse motivates me though. And everyone in this room, I think, can provide motivation for each other, because yeah, when we all do well for the horse then, and that's motivation there.
Well, I thought it was interesting when you said you couldn't expect one mentor to be everything that you needed for your career growth. I think it's important for us to realize that we can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
We also are just one part of somebody's day, and there are many of us that serve different roles, and I think it's a great intersection of what everybody does on this panel. We all serve a different role, and we can't expect to be everything to everyone. So I'll pitch this question to Melanie, since we've talked about this many times. Obviously, you are a mother to 6, so you have a busy schedule. You're also like a mother to many of the women on the backstretch that you work with on a daily basis. Why is it important to remember ourselves and self-love, and how does that come into what you do every day, and the belief of it's going to get better, the belief that we can do it? How does that factor into what you do every day and in your personal life?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, recently I stopped saying I'm busy, and I started saying life is full. Like my son does ASL, and he'll say life. Yes, I'm like, life is full. Because it puts a positive spin on the fact that yes, I'm busy, but life is full. There are a lot of blessings to count. Like, there's a lot going on, but a lot of those things are good things. But I was thinking about, we were talking about this before, and of course we all know, I think we're in a cultural moment where self-care has been elevated maybe to an idolatrous level, but I think as women, we do often lose ourselves. And so we can lose ourselves in a marriage, we can lose ourselves in a relationship, we can lose ourselves in our kids, we can lose ourselves in our jobs. So I think it is important to figure out what, one, have some time. Many people have, even on the last panel, talked about stopping, reflecting. I think we do need moments built in, but if we don't build those in, like every lady in this place knows, if you don't build that in, you're not going to take that time. So what that looks like for you, someone mentioned getting up in the morning, meditating. Maybe that's reading scripture. If you're a Christian, maybe that's some other religious following. Whatever that looks like for you, taking some time, even if it means getting up earlier, I think stillness and quiet are super important for us, like for our own souls. But I was going to say too, every woman in this story, or every woman in this room has a story. And I'm pretty sure that everyone in this room has experienced pain and loss, suffering. That's common to the human experience. And so personally, several years ago, I'm a crier, so I'll just go ahead and say that for the room. But we were in a point in our marriage, it was really tough, and I really felt like I didn't have anybody to turn to. I did, that's not really true. There are people who would have been right there for me. But the reality was it was something that I didn't want to share. I almost felt like everywhere I went, I was a fraud because there was this, secret stuff. And I was just like, wow, like this is too much. It was overwhelming. And when you're in a space like that, no matter what the suffering is, where you feel like you're going to drown, right? I called it an emotional tsunami. Everything's racing around me. We need to have people, like Brittany was mentioning, we need to have a tribe of people who love us and who care about us, and we know that. And we know that we can land on their couch tonight. Or we know that we can call them. And you need to find your tribe. That is super important. You may be from a family that didn't lend itself to being a tribe that supported you. But there are people that God can put in your life who can love you, who can support you, who can hold your hand, who can say, like she said, tough love, like you need to woman up here. But also like just to be that support for you. By God's grace, some of us have awesome teams. We have an awesome team at Churchline. I'm so grateful for that. But some of us are one-man bands. And like, we need to be able to say, hey, that Kellie's dealing with that. Like, she's a Lone Ranger. How do we come around her? How do we do that well in this industry? This is a group of 200 women who have chosen to be here for 2 days because they care about horses and they care about this industry. But I think we can care about each other and what role we take, but also like, hey, just as sisters, right? Just as women in this industry. So I think it's important, one, to find your tribe of people. And like Brittany mentioned, like those people aren't necessarily just gonna come to you. You're gonna have to put in some work and hoof it to find some of those women. And there are men, and there are gonna be different people, again, who serve different purposes, and likewise, you will be that for other people. And so I think finding those people is important. The second thing for me in that season was I need to identify what some healthy things are for me. I need to figure out those things, and I need to make sure that they're scheduled in. So for me, it was a piloxing class. I loved it. It was great. That was important. For me, it was meeting with a support group once a week of ladies who were dealing with the same thing that I was dealing with. And then, so like those two things, and then for me, it was having a date with one of my kids once a month. And so those were things that like gave life for me when everything else kind of felt like it was in this tsunami. And so those were grounding things, those were healthy things, and those were things that like I put in place for myself. So I think those are some really important pieces.
I'll go to Erin. Erin, as an executive that makes all the decisions and being a woman, obviously there's a lot of pressures in that. In the same vein of Melanie talking about finding things that give her purpose that are maybe outside of what we do and in a demanding job of nonprofit work, what are some of the things that you do that help you push past moments of busyness and compassion fatigue and asking people for things all the time? How do you find space for yourself?
Sure. Yeah, compassion fatigue is such an interesting thing, and it's a real thing. Essentially, it refers to like the negative costs of caring so much, right? Like what it does to you as a person. So I think it's really important, firstly, to recognize that. And when your sort of emotional reserves are kind of getting depleted, like be able to know that about yourself and take that moment, take what you need to kind of honor that. But for me, yeah, it sounds cliche, but I guess the work-life balance idea would kind of be appropriate here. I don't really love that word because balance, or that phrase, because balance kind of implies that you have to find this absolutely perfect balance between the two. And I don't know that that exists, because like life happens and work happens, and sometimes there is no balance, you know. But I found for me, like leaning into things that make me happy and allow me to like shut off my work brain for a time really helped me to come back refocused, re-energized, when I know that, you know, my energy levels are maybe depleting and I'm starting to walk that line, you know, towards burnout. For me personally, and I realize the irony in what I'm about to say here, and I'm not advocating that we all go out and get more work or another job, but for me, I have a side job, and it really helps me like shut off the TCA part of my brain, and that's about 3 times a year. I work for a adventure travel company, and I, on a long weekend, will guide women through national parks. It's really fun. It's super fun. But I do that, like I said, like 3 times a year, take my vacation days from TCA and do that. But one of the unexpected things I realized in doing that was I'm so focused in doing that job that I literally, like, I don't think about TCA. It kind of, you know, I have to shut it off. So when I come back to TCA on Monday morning, I feel refreshed and renewed and reinvigorated to really be able to focus into what I need to. So I would say kind of the takeaway in that is find something that allows you to do that, whether it be a hobby or a passion or, what did you say, Pilates? Was it Pilates?
It's Pilates and boxing.
That sounds amazing.
It is.
Yeah, I also love Pilates. So something, you know, along those lines that's going to allow you the space and the ability to be able to fully step away from what you need to step away from. But I also fully understand that horses don't know it's Christmas Day, or that you have dinner plans, or you know, backstretch workers certainly have to go take care of horses. So I say that, but I understand there are challenges in that. But I think that's a really important sort of thing to recognize about yourself. You know, when you maybe do start to feel that energy depletion and your emotional meter is just, you know, powering down, if there's any way to kind of step aside and shut that part of your brain off for a little while, that's what I found to be really helpful.
Absolutely. And Kellie, as a lifelong horsewoman, we talked a little bit earlier when Lindsay was talking about stable recovery and how healing the horses are to the people in the program. Does that give you strength being around the horse itself? Sometimes you have to take the strength that you need to get through these tough days and the burnout days. Do you feel that being around horses? Is it something that pushes you through? Do they give you the motivation to get up and keep pushing this initiative that sometimes seems like there isn't an end in sight?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when the horses first come in, they're so broken, not just physically, but mentally. And when you see them, you know, a month down the road and you can actually approach them without them having a meltdown, and it just gives you that feeling that what you're doing and what you're fighting for every day is helping. And, you know, we have a big volunteer program. We have a lot of kids that come in and want to learn about, you know, the horses and stuff. And so when I see the kids, when they first come in, have never been around a horse, and then you see them 2 months down the road, they're going out into the pasture, putting on a halter, and the horse is walking up to them. I mean, those are things that Puerto Rico never had any equine management plan or schools. We were the first one to do a school. We started 3 years ago, an equine academy, teaching all about management and welfare. And it's amazing how there's so many more people on the island now trying to do little programs like that. And I think that really helps me say, wow, we are making a difference. Because sometimes you get a bit numb about the whole thing, and you're just like, every day you get up at 5:30 in the morning, you go to bed at 11 o'clock at night. It's the same thing every single day, and you kind of forget about what's happening, and you're not doing enough, right? I always feel I'm not doing enough. I've always felt like that. And I think when you see the kids and you see the horses, and then you see them end up in these amazing homes and so happy and not lame anymore, and you know, they've had the time they needed to rehab, that really keeps pushing me especially to like keep going. And I mean, you have to learn to say no too. I have learned this year to say that word a little bit more.
And that's hard for us women. We always want to
Very
say
hard.
yes and
Yeah.
keep doing it, especially in the work that we do. I think in a different way, all of us serve either the animal or the human in some way, and that the compassion fatigue is real, and at some point we have to say no. Brittany, what do you think are some of the things that you do? You talked about relying on your village, your tribe. What are other things that you do in moments of feeling overwhelmed?
Oh gosh, that's really tough. There are definitely there are a lot of moments throughout the day that I feel overwhelmed. I think I just try and do my best, and I try and be honest with people, because a lot of times people will ask me things that I may not know the answer to, right? And I'm there and I'm supposed to know all of the answers. I am the expert.
The doctor.
Yeah, and that can be very overwhelming, where I don't know the answer, and so then I just try and be honest, and I say, I do not know at this time, I will go and find that out. And then I go back to my car, and that is my safe space between farms, and I have a moment to myself, and I just try and find things out. So then I do call people and lean on people for advice, for knowledge, and whatnot. And then I think in other moments when I feel overwhelmed, I really enjoy running. And so running is where I can go and kind of decompress a little bit and not think about things. I'm just trying to think about like my legs moving and not giving out. And so, yeah, it's a moment where I don't think about work for a little bit. So trying to find time to do that and remembering to do that can be hard. And so then I have that support system that says, did you go for a run this week? Like I have a friend that when she knows when I'm having a bad day, when I'm talking to her, she said, did you do that for yourself? I'm like, you know what, I actually didn't. I didn't take that time for myself this week. I haven't been able to find the time. And she says, just remember that you have to take care of yourself first, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of the animals and then the people around you. So
That's great. And Melanie talked about that too, about having limits, right? We can only do so much in one day. I spoke at the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America's conference this year, and for the first time, I think ever, when I was about to give my contact information, I said to everybody in the audience, and if I don't answer, it's a weekend that I'm not working and I'm not going to answer. And I think it's hard, especially if you're actually caring for the horses. Like Erin said, they don't know it's Christmas. And growing up in a horse racing family, there was no line in the sand. My dad left after we opened up presents because we had to do feed, right? And so I think I embodied that without even realizing that I was always available. And now I do try, if it's not crucial, they always leave a message if they're really in need. And now you can see on these iPhones, it actually types it up, so I don't even need to listen to it. And if it's, hi, I'm in an emergency, and it's a Saturday, then I will call. But if it's just saying, I'd like to talk to you about this, it can sometimes wait to Monday morning. So I think it's important for us to realize in an industry that's 365, 24/7, we do, even for a few minutes, if it's a 30-minute Pilates class, or it's going to have your cup of coffee before you start the day, that we do find those moments for ourselves. Because like you said, you are no use to any horse or human if you can't take care of yourself. So I think that's really great. I think we have about 6 minutes before the Q&A portion. If anybody do any of you have something additional to say? Go ahead.
I want to say something about what you were saying. A couple years ago, there was a Kentucky bred horse at the clinic, and he was going to be euthanized for poor body condition. He just raced 2 days before in that condition. And I was at a doctor's appointment with my son, and I couldn't answer the phone, so they euthanized him. And he was on our watch list. His breeder wanted him back home. She was willing to, help pay the expenses. And, I was yelled at by the racing commission, the vet, everybody, because I didn't answer the phone. And I was like, just because, I founded Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare with Shelley Blodgett. I'm actually the co-founder. But, and, the horses are all at my house, and, yes, it is mostly my responsibility, but I mean, I can't be available 24/7. And it made me think at that time to take my phone number off of everything, because it's like, why should it all fall on me all the time, right? So we have a website, we have our emails, and you know, Messenger on Facebook or whatever. But I was so hurt by that this horse was dead and it was my fault. And it happens all the time. Every week, horses are killed at the racetrack in Puerto Rico, and I feel responsible. And I can sit here and tell you, I feel responsible for 5,000 horses dying, because I can't be there all the time for these horses. And people call me, and I look at the phone, and I don't know who it is, and I don't answer. But it's like, why is this all up to me? And so when I went to the commission meeting for that one horse, you know, they're all like, well, you didn't answer your phone, so the horse is dead and it's your fault. And I was like, you know, it's not my fault. You know, first off, I don't know why the horse was running with poor body condition. It's the vet's fault. And I mean, if the horse doesn't need to be euthanized because of like a terrible injury or something, then why was it euthanized? So it was just interesting when you said that, you know, you can't be available 24/7. So one thing I did to stop that was I took my phone number off of a lot of our, you know, publicity and stuff that we have out, so.
And I think we train, you know, people ask of you as much as you continue to give them. And it's not to say don't do your job to the best of your ability. You absolutely should. But if you start to pull back, simply removing that phone number, eventually they realize that they can't call, and they get used to it and they accept it. In the beginning, they're going to be angry at you and blame you, but eventually they realize, well, I have to work within reasonable limits, and everyone becomes part of the culture, right? So we almost have to train the people we work with and the causes we work for to adapt to a realistic lifestyle. Horse racing has never been that great at that, but I think talking about it makes it right.
Yes, I agree. I think talking about it is huge, and we need to be the ones to start talking about it, and we need to show people that are coming into this industry that you can continue that conversation. Because yes, training ourselves is very, very challenging, but training others, we need everyone on board, you know, for that. And so keeping that open conversation is very important.
Anyone want to say anything else? We can open to questions.
I think to dovetail off that, I think, you know, we sometimes feel crushed by the weight of expectations that are put on us. We may step into a role that already has those expectations built in. And I think when we step into those 100%, you know, then there's this expectation, and then we feel, there's a demand on us, obviously, but we feel burdened, like we're carrying that expectation, and we feel burdened to perform in that way. We value in our society, in the world really, but we value productivity and efficiency. And so sometimes those win over, you know, like, is everybody in the room okay? You know, no, we got it done, but we're dead. Like, okay. So, yeah, I think that speaks to that balance a little bit. But yeah, I think it's important, like you're saying, to talk about it and to define expectations, to talk through it. And when you realize, hey, I'm hitting a rock bottom here. I'm at that compassion fatigue or that burnout. Maybe that's a point at which, unfortunately, when we hit that we realize we need a reset. You know, collectively, we need to do something different because we don't want this to happen to all of our people, right? We want to keep people in the industry, and we want more people to join the industry, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I echo what everyone says, and I was just kind of sitting here thinking, yeah, why is it that I feel the need that I have to respond to an email immediately? You know, I take that on myself sometimes, and, you know, sometimes you just need to train yourself to sit back and wait and say, it's okay, I don't need to respond to this in 1 minute. You know, I can complete the task that I was working on. Maybe it will make, you know, more efficiency sense to finish one thing before going on to the other. So, yeah, I absolutely think being better, more cognizant of that and not feeling the need to be everything to everyone at every moment is important to remember too.
Absolutely, and looking at a room like this, I think a lot of us put on ourselves that, and sometimes someone like Kellie, someone like myself, we are the one person that does that role, right? But I think in a room full of people that love the sport, want to grow in the sport, whether you've been in it a long time or you're new to it, telling these stories, what we do, our mission statement, how we feel, there might be somebody in this room that shares that passion that just has yet to be connected to your cause or your career, and will eventually could move into that role and share some of that burden. So I think sometimes we think we're on the island, and oftentimes we might be the only one on the island, but it's because people don't know that we are putting out a smoke signal. They can't see it until we hear about it. So I think connecting with the people in these rooms, you might find someone that also wants to do that role, and you can share the responsibilities that you have in your career and encourage people to do that. So. Okay, let's do some Q&A. Yes?
As someone who's relatively new in the industry and my career as a whole, oh gosh, okay. As someone who's relatively new in the industry and my career as a whole, how do you manage the need and the want to establish a stronghold in the industry while also worrying about being passed up because you have set a boundary? Does that make sense? Like, to the whole panel, saying, you know, I want to be in this industry and to be recognized for various things, not simply because I just want to be recognized, but because I want to be an active participant, but also worrying, if I set this boundary and take a weekend away, is there going to be an opportunity that I'm passed up on? And since I wasn't involved in that industry, or in that opportunity, future opportunities I'm going to be passed up on.
Who wants to answer? I don't think I do that well, so I don't want to answer that.
I think one thing that I would say, so I mentioned earlier, but I think there are times, if you like the analogy of a farmer, right? There are times when it's harvest time and you're like every day, 12 hours a day, push until you get that harvest done. And then there's a time of rest or reprieve. And it might be that you need to say, in a healthy way, you need to say yes to one thing because you're building your career, I guess. But I think just to make sure, I think that you do have that, you have that tribe of people, you have those people in place, and then to voice it. If you walk into that, I think someone earlier said something about just being yourself and being honest. I think that's super important, even though you're like unzipping, you're letting everybody know this is who you really are. There's some, you don't have to let all your, you don't have to put all your cards on the table. But if you walk into that and something is like, you're like, okay, this is not what I was expecting, or maybe I can do A, B, C, and D, but I'm having trouble doing E. Can you give me some support? I think that's something that, you need to ask, you need to advocate for yourself. So I think it's not wrong to maybe say yes to 1, 2, 3 things in a row, and you might be putting your neck out there a little bit. I think the ladies here in television probably have some testimony to this, but I think, does that make sense? I think you might say yes a few times, but if you walk into that and you recognize, hey, this is like, I stepped into something, it's too big for my britches type thing. Can you help me? And so I think you'll find that, you might find some resistance to that, but I think you'll find people who, if they really want you to be on that team and they're, grateful for you, that they're going to say like, hey, you're right. Like, how can we support you? What can we do? If they really want to build that and they want that to be healthy. So that would be one thing I would say.
Yeah, that's smart. And I think people respond to vulnerability. If you kind of approach it from a place of honesty and whatever the situation might be, I think 9 times out of 10 people are understanding and want to understand and want to be there to support you. So maybe just, because I think sometimes we, feel like maybe we can't paint the entire picture for whatever reason or whatever, but I think, kind of leading with vulnerability sometimes about what you need or what you're looking for in a particular situation kind of helps the other person maybe relate and understand where you're coming from as well.
Any other questions? Jenny over there.
Wait, I'm bringing the mic.
Oh.
I hate these things. Melanie, first, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story and being so personal about it, because I think as a mother of a toddler and married to a man that works in the industry as well, that we can all have some degree of that feeling of just feeling like we're burnout everywhere. So I really want to thank you for sharing that. My question would be, do any of you all feel like when you're hitting that burnout point at work or at home or any aspect of life, that your male counterparts, coworkers, even bosses, do you find yourself getting support from them when you're hitting that burnout point? Or is it mostly that you can turn to your female coworkers to get support from that?
I can. I think my husband is Puerto Rican, and I think my husband has been the biggest supporter of Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare. He doesn't understand why I do it, but he has built it to what it is today. And my children, I have a 19-year-old and a 27-year-old. So I find that probably my family is probably the person I turn to. Board members come and go, employees come and go. I try to, when I am burnt out now, like this has been a really hard year for me. We're financially really suffering, and I don't really know what we're gonna do. But I think that at the end of the day, my husband always says to me, because we have a small heavy equipment company also, which I run, plus I also have a granddaughter now. She's 1 year old, and I have her every Thursday, which is the best day of the week for me.
So you're busy 24/7.
Yeah, but I think he's seeing that I'm very burnt out, and he's actually really stepped up to the plate lately and been kind of trying to help me resolve some of the issues around the farm, and trying to let me have some space just to take a couple hours. Like if he's like calling me, he needs parts for the tractor or something, I'm like, you know, I'm going to have lunch with my daughter, and he's like, okay, fine. Like, and I found before it wasn't like that, but I think my family this year is seeing that it's a real struggle. So, I mean, I know for me, I think my family would be the one that I would really turn to.
I agree. My husband is one of my biggest supporters. He's not in the industry at all. He shows up at Keeneland and loses money, but he is a CEO of a smart locker company. It's completely different. But when I come to him and express frustrations, feelings of being overwhelmed, things like that, he listens to me, and then he says, okay, do you want me to keep listening, or would you like feedback? And I just got goosebumps, because it's like the nicest thing that he can say to me. Do you want feedback, or do you just want to keep talking? Yeah. And that's huge. On the other hand, I have one of my mentors is an older male, and he was my boss during residency, and I value his opinion and his mentorship very much. But because we're women and we do show up in so many ways and we crush it every single day, he wouldn't see when I was unwell, you know, because we do show up and do all of these things. So he didn't know when I was approaching burnout, even though I felt like, how can you not see it on my face? And like in my body language. And so I had to tell him, which was the hardest thing ever.
That was going to be my next question,
yes.
was whether you felt comfortable enough and what you felt the best way approaching your boss or your mentor or somebody at your work that, okay, look, I need some help.
Yep. It did not happen on day one. And it's much easier said than done, but it was, once I got to the point where I felt comfortable saying it, it was like, I have to say it, because he doesn't see it, and I don't think that was anything against him. He did not have that social awareness to see that, and so I had to say it. And then by me saying it too, I think the thing that made me brave enough to say it was that me speaking it would help the people coming behind me. And that was huge, to leave it better, you know.
And when you came.
Yes, and so that made it a smidge easier, but it's really hard.
Okay.
Hi, I have a three-parter here for Erin and Kellie. Do you guys think that the idea that aftercare founders and or executive directors should do the work for free or for below living wages contributes to burnout, part one? Part two, is there guilt around getting paid for the work? And part 3, what can we as the industry do to change that narrative?
Take that, or you want to go first?
Well, I got a lot to say there.
Yeah, you do.
Chrissy is actually an ex-board member of Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare, and she's a huge advocate for horses in the Caribbean and horses in racing in general. I worked for Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare for many years for free. I ended up quitting my full-time job as a shipping agent in Puerto Rico to take over the organization, and we needed more hands-on retraining, rehabbing the horses. So basically the board insisted that I take a small salary, which was $300 a week, and which is ridiculous. Plus, I probably work 70 hours a week, so I volunteer basically 30 hours a week. I think that I would love to have a job that I got paid, that I could make a living, that we weren't financially struggling a lot. My husband, like I was saying, is very supportive, and when I made the decision to quit my job and to run CTA full-time, he was like, okay, like we can't really do this, but he knew it was my passion, and he wanted to give me a chance to do it and make the organization bigger, and the academy, the school. So the wages in Puerto Rico are very low. Like, we have a farm manager, he gets paid $16 an hour. I get paid less than he does. What was the other question? Yes, I'm very guilty. I feel every day that I'm taking money away from the horses. I mean, you know, we didn't have, the reason I got obligated to take a salary is because we had no health plan, and my son broke his, I think it was when he broke his arm, and we had to pay cash for his surgery, which was like $8,000 with a credit card. And I was just like, you know, I can't keep doing this. So yeah, I feel guilty. I feel guilty today. I mean, I feel guilty that I'm here. You know, it was when I was called to come here, I was like, you know, I can't leave the farm, I can't leave the horses, I can't leave the business, I can't leave my kids, my granddaughter. I'm supposed to be babysitting her today. My daughter had to take the day off work because she didn't have anybody to babysit. So yeah, I mean, it's 24/7 guilt. And I wish I could make good money, but it's my passion. And my mother was an amazing horsewoman. I grew up with horses in England. I'm from England. And she took the horses off of the racetrack in England and taught them how to play polo. And so I don't know. I mean, I think when you do something that's your passion, and it helps with the burnout too, that, I mean, I think I should be grateful and celebrate the small things. You know, a horse gains a few pounds after a month being off the track, or, you know, we got a new container load of hay shipped into the island, donated. I think, yeah, I think there's so many, for me, there's just so many emotions all the time. It's just a daily struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think executive directors should be paid for their work. You know, maybe when you're forming a nonprofit organization, you know, in your first year of, you know, kind of getting your donations in and that sort of thing, perhaps there's a discussion about, you know, not necessarily taking a salary, but you should absolutely be paid for your work, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm a little different than Kelly. TCA doesn't care for horses. We are a grant maker, so we're providing funding to, like I said, 98 charities across the country. So I'm not on the ground like Kelly is, you know, day in, day out, taking care of horses. But that said, you know, the work that we do from a fundraising perspective to be able to make those grants, you know, there's a staff of 2 at TCA. It's myself and a development manager. We do have a board of 17 that is often helpful as well. But the question about do you feel guilty, that's interesting because yes, I do. At TCA in my role, you know, obviously all of our expenses come through me, and, you know, I look at every expense and I kind of think of that as, oh wow, that could be a grant. So that's really how I kind of look at every expenditure that goes out of our organization. Is it necessary? Can I ask for someone? Can I ask someone for a lesser rate if it's a vendor, that sort of thing? Because I have that lens on of like, this could be a grant to Kellie or to another organization, but we also have to run our organization effectively so we can raise that $1 million a year and provide that funding to so many charities. But yeah, good question.
I think that's
We have
right.
time for one more or no?
Oh, I don't know. Do we? No. Yes.
Short one.
Short
Okay,
one.
Here you go.
Yeah.
First of all, recognizing imposter syndrome and what I'm about to say. But as someone, we've talked about this industry, a common theme is it's 24/7. It's a 24/7 industry. There's lots of reasons why, from the backside workers that have to care for the horses that don't know if it's Christmas, all of those things. I was having a very interesting conversation earlier with Naomi. There you are. And we were talking about how we've seen a little bit of a culture shift from, but it's always been this way. If you want to succeed, you've got to put, your whole asset. You can't just half-ass it. You got to be there 24/7. You got to do all these things. As a leader that doesn't want to, or someone that people think might be in a leadership role that they are surprised to them, how can you advocate when you are somebody, Shannon, that isn't good at saying no or turning off or saying, oh, it's a weekend, I shouldn't answer my phone? How can you make it better for the people that are coming up across the industry? I mean, not just at the racetracks or the different companies, but on the backside. And we're going to run out of people that know how to take care of horses here. How can we better advocate for a culture shift?
That's a good question. I think Melanie touched on it a little bit about understanding that we have limits, and maybe in the beginning with the question that was earlier, that in the beginning you might have to say yes to all these things. You get to a point in your career that maybe you've proven yourself enough that you can start to add boundaries. And like I said, I don't do it well. I think I do it better now than I did when I was starting off in my 20s. I think it is important to, if you have a staff below you or you have a mentee or an intern, to be open to what they have to say if they have something going on. I mean, Samantha is my assistant, and in the summer, this summer, I was like, no, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have a personal trainer at 7:30, so in order to have time to shower, I might be 15 minutes late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just make sure you're there and you can answer the phone and we can work together. If you have a doctor's appointment, please leave, take your time, do that. I think it's just being open to listening to people as a leader and finding ways to accommodate them, maybe in ways that you didn't feel accommodated. It is an evolution, right?
And educating too, I think it's really important. We're accredited with the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, and I know when a lot of new organizations that are coming into the Alliance, they call me. Never met me, but I don't know, they call me and they ask me for advice on, how to run their organization, and, can I do this? Can I take a salary? And I'm like, I'm not one to tell you can take a salary, but I mean, you should be paid for what you do if you can, if you have it in your budget. But I think it's important that, even though I am going through a burnout, I still try and educate on how to do things for the new generation when they're coming in, on how to do things, better practices, and, with the employees too. We don't, like I said, we don't pay very much. One of our farm hands only gets $11.50 an hour, and but try and do little things also for them to make them feel valued. If a gift card for dinner or something like that, something simple. But I think it's really important to educate on better practices.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. We know it was a bit of a heavier topic, but like we learned, it's important to acknowledge our limits and know that celebrate those wins when you have them, because it'll get you through to the next one. So thank you very much, and thank you to the panel.